The Texas sun burned bright against the endless sweep of land, painting the plains in copper and gold. Dust swirled behind the long line of cattle stretching to the horizon. The trail drive had begun 2 days ago, and already the men were grumbling. Cowboys with raw tempers and empty bellies were dangerous company. Jack Calder, trail boss and seasoned rancher, rode out ahead, scanning the horizon for water holes and the best grazing ground. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and known among his men as steady as stone. But even stone cracked under pressure, and with no cook on hand, the strain was mounting. The last one had quit before they'd even left Abilene. Too much work, too many mouths to feed, and not enough coin for the effort. Jack had tried to hire another, but the timing had failed. And now, a drive stretching weeks ahead loomed with no steady meals to keep his men in line. Jack's horse shifted beneath him. He tugged on the reins, frowning. "We can move cattle, mend fences, and fight rustlers," he muttered to himself. "But I'll be damned if I can fry up beans fit to eat every night." From the rear of the herd came another round of complaints, voices carrying on the wind. The men were tired, hungry, ready to quit. Jack cursed under his breath. And then, dust rose behind them. Not the thick churn of cattle hooves, but the sharper rhythm of a horse. He turned, narrowing his eyes. Someone was riding hard toward the herd. The figure grew clearer, a woman, hat pulled low, skirts tucked up for the saddle, hair whipping loose in the wind. She reined her horse with practiced ease, slowing as she approached. The men noticed too. Shouts rose, half amusement, half disbelief. Jack rode forward, blocking her path before the cowboys' tongues grew too free. "Trail's long and rough," he called out. "Not a place for ladies." The woman pushed her hat back, revealing sharp cheekbones, steady brown eyes, and the kind of determination Jack had seen in soldiers, not in the genteel ladies of town. "I heard you needed a cook," she said simply. Jack blinked. "Who told you that?" "Every man in town," she replied. Word spreads fast when hungry cowhands spend their pay at the saloon instead of on a hot meal. "My name's Clara Dawson." The name stirred something faint in Jack's memory. Dawson. He'd heard of her husband once, a farmer killed 2 years back in a border raid. Clara Dawson had been left with little but grit. Jack studied her a long moment. She was slender but not frail, hands calloused, a rifle slung across her saddle as comfortably as any cowboy's rope. "You're serious?" he asked. Clara nodded. "I can cook over fire, patch clothes, and ride with the herd if need be. I've been managing a small spread by myself, so this won't scare me." Her voice dropped slightly. "And I need the work." Behind them, the men cheered, already imagining hot biscuits instead of burned beans. Jack's jaw tightened. A trail drive was no place for a woman, not with storms, stampedes, and men who forgot their manners after dark. But the desperation in his men's eyes, and the steel in Clara's, made him pause. "You take orders from me," he said finally, "and you stay close to camp after nightfall." Clara's eyes flashed, but she nodded. Understood. By sundown, Clara had a fire going and the smell of bacon and cornbread drifting through camp. The men gathered eagerly, voices lighter than they'd been since the drive began. Jack hung back, watching her work. She moved with purpose, her sleeves rolled, hair tied back, face flushed from the heat of the fire. The cowboys devoured the meal, some tipping their hats in thanks, others too busy chewing to speak. Later, when the stars spilled across the sky and the herd settled, Jack found himself near the fire again. Clara was scrubbing the pans clean with sand and water, humming low under her breath. "You weren't lying," he said. She glanced up. "About cooking?" "About not scaring easy." Clara's smile was faint, but steady. "Life's already thrown worse at me than a few hungry men." Something in her tone caught him, an undercurrent of loss, but also resilience. He felt it tug at the part of him that had long gone quiet, the part that remembered his own wife, gone nearly a decade now. The trail wore on. Days blurred into a rhythm of dust, cattle, and sky. Clara cooked, sewed, and even rode with the herd when storms threatened to scatter them. The men respected her quickly. She didn't chatter, didn't flinch, and wasn't afraid to snap at them when they grew lazy. Jack noticed everything. How she laughed softly at the men's jokes without encouraging them too far. How she handled her rifle when coyotes circled too close. How her eyes softened when one of the younger drovers, barely 17, burned his hand on the fire and she wrapped it with gentle hands. But it wasn't until trouble came that he realized just how much she had carved her place in their camp, and in him. It was a night like any other, stars sharp and the air still. The herd was restless, but manageable. Jack had just finished his round when he spotted movement beyond the firelight, 3 riders, moving low, circling the herd. Rustlers. He grabbed his rifle, whistled low to his men. But before he could call Clara back into camp, she was already on her horse, rifle in hand, riding into the dark. "Clara," he roared, spurring forward. The night erupted in chaos. Shots cracked, cattle bawled, hooves thundered as the herd threatened to stampede. Clara rode straight for the rustlers, fearless, firing a warning shot that clipped a man's hat clean off. The rustlers turned tail, not expecting such fire from a cook. By the time Jack reached her, she was steady in the saddle, breath fast but eyes sharp. "You're supposed to stay in camp," he growled, grabbing her reins. "And let them steal your herd?" she shot back. "You'd have lost half your cattle before you got a shot off." Jack stared at her, furious and shaken. Her bravery lit something in him he hadn't felt in years. Fear for someone else. He didn't speak again until dawn, when the herd had calmed and the camp settled. Clara was at the fire, sleeves rolled, cooking like nothing had happened. Jack crouched beside her. "You've got no fear," he said quietly. Clara stirred the pot. "Fear doesn't feed a person. Or keep cattle safe." She paused, eyes lifting to his. "Besides, I didn't ride out there for the herd. I rode for the men who need it. And for you." Her words struck him harder than a bullet. For him. Jack had lived years behind walls of duty and silence, but Clara's courage had breached them in one night. He reached out, covering her hand with his. Calloused met calloused, steady and warm. "You don't know what you're stirring up," he said gruffly. Clara's lips curved. "Don't I?" The trail stretched on, but everything felt different. Jack found himself watching her more, listening to her laugh, seeking her company when the stars were bright. She, in turn, softened around him, letting him glimpse not just her grit, but her heart, the woman who had lost and still dared to give. By the time the herd reached Kansas, the men spoke of Clara as one of their own. But Jack knew better. She wasn't just one of them. She had become the reason he looked beyond the horizon with hope. On the last night before they parted ways, he walked to her fire. She was sitting quiet, staring at the flames. "You'll be heading back to your land," he said. She nodded. "And you'll take another drive." Silence stretched. The air between them thickened. Finally, Jack reached for her hand.